Let me introduce you to our panel. We have Kendra Jackson. She's a former foster youth for Sacramento County. So we have Margot in the back. Any other Sacramento people here? Okay. Former client. I'm sure you know you probably weren't around when she was receiving those services. But so she has some unique perspectives. She works for the Office of the Ombudsperson's Office, the
OFCO.
OFCO. Office of
Foster Care Ombudsperson.
So it was the Ombudsman's Office, and then those posters for those people that are the monitors or they go to the STRTPs, we look at those posters. This is what they do. And so this is the training that is going to be provided where we're going to share some of the changes that have happened. So let me give you a little bit more background. There is also a little information in your book, but I wanted a little bit more information from them. She also was formerly incarcerated, so she's received some, different services from different systems. She recently graduated from Sacramento State this past Saturday with a Master's in Sociology. She's a member of the Guardian Scholar and Project Rebound. She's a Ronald McNair and Sally Casanova pre-doctorate scholar. So, isn't that awesome?
Thank you.
Okay. And we also have Shekinah Paredo. She designed some of the books that you have available and put together some of the public-facing OFCO website and publications. She's a member of the statewide work group to address suicide prevention and LGBTQ plus youth populations that she's worked with as foster youth who are in tribal members from Northern California, Humboldt, Del Norte, Trinity counties, and incarcerated youth survivors of sexual assault and dating violence and LGBTQ youth. Oh, that will remind me. If you can also put your phones on silent in that way. Probably should check mine as well. Because I'm likely to remind everybody, but not do it myself. So, these are your panelists. As you're aware, there is monthly training on foster youth Bill of Rights that happens the first Thursday of the month. This is not a replication of that. They've put together tremendous information and very interactive presentation for you all. So, with that, I'm going to hand it off. And once they're done with the presentation, and as you go through the presentation, you have questions, I'll collect those and then we'll pose them. So we have a short period of time, and I'm not going to kind of waste that time. I'm going to let them do their presentation and enjoy.
Thank you, Anna.
Awesome. Thank you, Anna.
You have the PowerPoints. There's also some pads in the back. So I will sit down and
Okay, so we're going to first start out with the learning objectives. So the reason that we came here today, the things to talk about. So we are going to learn about the role and the functions and the limitations and the laws that govern the California Office of the Foster Care Ombudsperson, or OFCO, or you'll hear us say OFCO because it's a mouthful to say like where we work. And okay, we're going to learn about the California Foster Youth Bill of Rights. And we're really excited about the Bill of Rights in our office. It's like the primary purpose of the work that we do. We're going to learn about reasonable and prudent parent standards, which we have also, we call RPPS. So if we say RPPS, that means reasonable and prudent parenting standards. And we're going to learn about cultural competency and cultural humility as well. And we're going to learn about how to uphold the Foster Youth Bill of Rights and how to help youth advocate and uphold their rights themselves today. By applying, a cultural humility and RPPS. I'm so sorry.
So raise your hand if you've heard of our office before or heard what an ombudsperson is. Okay, cool, a couple of people. So we hope at the end of this presentation, our really long name will be synonymous with advocating for youth and helping foster youth, because that is the main role of our office. So what exactly is an ombudsperson? Well, essentially an ombudsperson is an individual who is independent and who is essentially someone who is a third-party person who receives and investigates any complaints related to a specific government system. So when their investigations are complete, they tend to make recommendations that are informal to address some of those systemic issues. So Guessing from our name, the Office of the Foster Care Ombudsperson, you can kind of already guess what system we oversee, and that would be the foster care and child welfare system in California. So that is our office main role. We're essentially the watchdogs of the system, and our main goal is to ensure that all those systemic issues that we see are resolved and that we are able to help and support youth through upholding their rights and working with that youth's team.
So we have many, many roles in the Office of the Foster Care Ombudsperson. So we're a neutral and independent office. So first of all, that is our first role, is to be neutral and independent, and that helps us to be able to solve the problems and complaints that come through our office. So these are complaints that have to do, again, with the care, rights, placement, and services of any youth who is in a foster care placement. This does also apply to probation youth who are in foster care placements under the Foster Youth Bill of Rights. So we help foster youth, we help social workers, probation officers, counselors, CASAs, resource parents, and advocates. Anyone who's an advocate for a youth within the foster care system, we help them to understand the rights so that they're able to uphold them. We also help by making policy recommendations based on the information that we find, based on the phone calls that we take on our complaint line to help improve the foster care system. So if you have any concerns about the care, rights, placement, or services of a youth in foster care, then our office is the office to call, because more than likely there's something that we can do to help, but that is our primary role and function.
All right, thank you, Kendra. So Kendra went over some of the things that our office can do, and now I will be discussing some of our limitations based on our statute. So if you want to take a look at the legislation that governs our office, you can look at Welfare and Institutions Code 16164. So some things that we are not able to change are any court decisions. So the California courts are above our office, so if a judge makes a certain order, of course we're not able to make any changes regarding that order. However, we can still explain to people how they can go about requesting a change in a court order, such as filing a 388 petition, aka a JV 180 form, in order to have that change made. Or if they are an active member of the case, such as the parent or the child, they can of course talk to their attorney and speak out during the hearings as well. Another thing we cannot change are any case plans, as that's typically written and developed by the social worker in conjunction with that child and the family as well. So even though we ourselves cannot make the change, we can still let people know how they can go about advocating for change, whether that be asking for a CFT or a child and family team meeting, speaking directly with their worker, and trying to explain what they would like to happen in terms of changing their case plan. Another really hot topic that we get and a lot of calls that we get is related to personnel issues. So people calling us because they want us to fire their social worker or have their social worker changed, and they just want whoever's assigned to their case to basically be a different person, which unfortunately we are not able to address since that deals with a personnel issue. That's more of a county employee type of topic rather than more of the care, placement, services, and rights like Kendra explained, so we would not be able to assist with that either. But again, overall, if you forget any of our limitations, just remember what we can change and what we can help with, which is care, placement, services, and rights. And our limitations would be court orders and court decisions, case plan changes, and then personnel issues. So anything dealing with a county employee.
So these are the statistics from our office in 2021. And as I go over them, I'll add like a few more things from like what we do. But you can see that I talked about we take complaints. So in 2021 on our hotline, we processed that 18,179 calls. In addition to all the other duties that we do, we opened the 5,011 new cases, and we reviewed that many complaint issues. What we also did and what we're doing now, another role, is that we train on the Foster Youth Bill of Rights and the reasonable and prudent parenting standards. We sent out 60,745 of these publications that you have, and we still have about 50,000 more in our office. So if you need some, please feel free to call us on our hotline. We'll send you some more. But my favorite part of this job, and I think it's because of me being a former foster youth, is when foster youth call for those verification letters so that they can go to college. I'm a real big proponent on higher education, being that I just completed it. I had some barriers. I couldn't do it in a timely manner, but these children, these youth, they have a whole future ahead of them, and they have the the ability to be able to have it, a lot of them don't know. So when they call me for a verification letter, it's in their inbox in 20 minutes. Like it's a 24-hour turnaround if you look on the OPCO website. But if they get Kendra, they're gonna have that letter in their inbox in 20 minutes because I know how important it is so they can go to school and they can get those resources and be in like the Guardian Scholars Program, EOP, EOP&S. And so it's very important to me in my job to make sure that's the most important part of the duty that I do every day in that office is writing verification letters for foster youth.
Awesome, all right. So thank you all so much for sitting there and learning more about our office, our roles, our duties, our functions. So now we're going to go ahead and take the time to learn more about who's in the room today. So if you all would be willing to participate, we're gonna go ahead and get to know in what capacity you work with youth. So raise your hand in the room if you are a county child welfare worker, social worker, you work with the county at the child welfare level. Okay, raise your hand if you're a probation officer or other law enforcement work. Oh, okay.
Oh.
Well, that's to be expected. We're at a CPOC conference. And then raise your hand if you are an education professional, so a school counselor, foster youth liaison. Okay. How about if you're a CASA, court-appointed special advocate? If you're a staff at a congregate care facility? Oh, okay. Variety, okay. Staff at a foster family agency? Okay, awesome. Any service providers that work in the field of mental health, such as therapists or counselors, or provide regional center services, specialized services, okay? And anybody who is a resource parent? Okay, all right. So we got some variety. Awesome. Thank you all, everyone, for participating. So now we're going to get to learn more about everyone here in the room. So if you see in front of you, you have 4 blank index cards. Oh, yes. Oh, community restoration. Oh, I see. Oh, yeah, we don't have that there.
And I was a CPS social worker. I just ran into somebody that I used to go to his wonderful consequence center every night. I was a CPS social worker for 8 years prior to coming here.
Oh, awesome. Well, thank you for being here.
We tried to
We tried to brainstorm, but wait.
everybody. Yes, no, thank you.
Yes, thank you. All right, so we wanted to get to know everyone more. So in front of you will be 4 blank index cards. So as you see here on the PowerPoint, we're gonna ask that you all write whatever is stated here on the slide. So on the first card, write what your most valuable personal item is. On the second card, write your favorite cultural food dish. The third card, a tradition that is important to you. This could be celebrating a holiday or some sort of family tradition that you have. And the last one, a person that you have a good connection with. So anybody that you have a very good relationship with. So we'll give you all a few moments to write that down. And then we're gonna go ahead and share and get to know each other a little bit more.
Oh, okay. I get to share a personal story. Okay, so I'm so excited. So what happened is, and I have the data to prove it. When I first came to the office, OPCO, I'm going to say OPCO, you guys, I'm so sorry. When I first started working for OPCO, I started in 2019 as a graduate student assistant when I was still, well, I've only been out of grad school for like a few days, but when I was still in grad school. So, but I elevated up and became permanent. So because of my status of being formerly incarcerated and being a member of Project Rebound, I've gone into institutions like the Pelican Bay and spoke to people on the level 4 yard about higher education, about going to college. And because of my experience with Project Rebound, I was also able to go into DJJs and do presentations. So I've been into OH Chad, because I can't say the whole name. I've been into OH Close, and I've been into the facility in Ventura with Project Rebound. So I went in there and did presentations on higher education and former foster youth, and a lot of these youth started asking questions, and it was like, well, if you were ever in the foster care system. So at that point, I gave them the contact information. We started getting the calls. It started trickling in a little bit at first. I made the contacts. The parole agents there were calling like for the letters with the kids, and then the next year it got bigger, and now we're getting the calls because I have like connections. With the probation departments in Riverside. I've presented to Ventura And at Chad and Close, we actually went into there right before the pandemic and did an educational fair and talked to the kids. And so that's how they know that they're eligible and they know to call our office for these verification letters.
All right, does anybody need more time?
Okay.
Yes, okay. Give you all a minute.
Our colorers need more time.
Yes, okay.
Give them
The artists
grace.
need more
Give them
time.
Grace. But also, if you do have any youth, I'm just going to say that please feel free to contact our office. If the youth can call us directly, but if a third party contacts on behalf of the youth, we just need to do a release of information or ROI, and we'd be more than happy to provide the information because we really want them to have them, when they go into placement or when they're coming out, so that they're able to, get the resources that they're eligible for.
One thing I will add is that we do have a capability on our website to send an online request for a verification letter. So if your kiddos are ever busy in the daytime or are working in the day and they just want us to reach out to them at their convenience, they can also submit an online form too. So whatever works for them, we try to be as accessible as possible.
You get the information from CWICMS if there was ever an open case?
Yes, all of that information we're able to access through the statewide database, and from there we can confirm that the youth is in foster care. And if for some reason the youth still has an open case, because we can only write letters for youth who have closed cases, we will directly connect them with their ILP coordinator or their current worker so they can get that confirmation that they're still in foster care. So we can still assist them with connecting to the right person if it's not our office.
And if they were a probation youth, then we give them the number for their probation officer in the county that they were actually in care in as well to write the letter.
Okay, so I think it looks like most people are done. Right? Okay, awesome. All right, so with the first card, your most valuable personal item, can I please have 3 volunteers raise their hand and be willing to share with the group what their valuable personal item is? Yes. You're a brave soul, thank you.
I will preface this by saying I am absolutely not a sentimental person. So I don't have things that are like, oh, that has so much sentimental value. No. So I put my vehicle because I really, really value my independence. And if I didn't have a vehicle, an ability to go wherever I needed to go or wanted to go at any point in time, I would hate that. So I tend to drive places rather than like fly because rental cars are super pricey and I don't want to be without a car. And I don't like depending on other people to take me places and get me where I need to be. So like if I need to go get food, I'm going to go get it. I don't want to wait till you're ready to make me. No. So my car.
Awesome, thank you. That's
Perfect. That is, you know what? That's like the perfect answer for what I wanted to hear today. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
I put family photos. I
Family
don't have a lot. They were lost because of a bunch of situations, so I don't have a lot. So the ones I have, I can share.
Oh, that's awesome, very
Thank you.
sentimental,
Thank
thank
you for
you. And then
sharing.
one more volunteer?
My bed.
Oh.
Good, okay.
Good one.
Yeah, that's a good one. Standing ovation.
I also had a car that I don't know what it was health, but I had to go and then in bed.
Oh no, these are awesome.
Welcoming everything, like right where I need to be.
Yes, these are all amazing answers. So we have a car representing independence, family photos, sentimental value, personal connection, bed, comfortability. It's yours, you can sleep in it. Awesome, thanks y'all so much for sharing. So we're gonna ask everyone to take the card of their personal item, hold it up in the air. All right, perfect. Now I want you to take the card and rip it up.
Oh.
Now you do not get to have access to that personal item again. It's gone from your possession. This is an experience that foster youth have once they enter foster care. When removal happens and they're removed from their families and from their homes, they tend to not have time to gather their personal belongings. And that story of youth having to have a plastic bag to carry their belongings, moving from placement to placement, a lot of times that means personal items are left behind, lost, or stolen, and all of those important things that belong to them sometimes are no longer in their possession. So that is one way we wanted y'all to kind of see the population that we work with, especially with personal items. That's one way that youth can experience foster care.
That's why I loved your answer so much. So now we have the second card, your favorite cultural food dish. Do I have 3 people that would like to share? What? Okay. Oh, shrimp creole. Okay,
yummy.
thank you. Mm-hmm. Oh, that
yummy.
sounds good. Okay.
These are very flavorful dishes. I guess. Fried bread.
Ooh, fried rice. Okay.
And then we had a fourth hand? Oh, y'all making me hungry now. We just ate it.
Right, okay, okay. Thank you for sharing. So now I want you all to take your cards and hold your cards up. Okay. And now I want you to swap your card with anybody, person closest to you. Swap cards.
Some disappointments.
Okay. So do I have 3 or 4 people want to share what their new favorite cultural food is? Enchiladas, okay. Who else wants to share their favorite new food? Oh, that sounds divine. Okay. Who else? Anyone else? You got sushi? Okay. Anyone who told me the first time who want to share what their new card says? Mongolian barbecue.
If
Okay.
I can just piggyback super quickly, so sorry, on the trash bag, items. I tried to institute where, we could confidently use suitcases because the bags bust. And even though it may look like super dirty, like, you know, some of my youth had like, an item from their dad's best friend and it was super old or something like that. And, I think it just, it gives them a little bit of dignity to not have it in the bag because it shows that you're a foster youth client and then everybody can see your items.
Exactly. That's a great example of implementing normalcy, which is actually something we're going to talk about a little bit later.
Can I just follow up with that? Because we don't use bags in our county. We've actually connected with churches. So
Yes.
they are more than willing to give you donations of new luggage. Every year we get new luggage.
I got a verbal warning for getting one of my gently used suitcases.
Well, I'd have rather ask for forgiveness than ask for We get new luggage every year. That's awesome.
That's good. That's good. Okay. So the purpose of this was to show that a lot of times when youth go into foster care, they go into a placement or a home that's a different cultural background than theirs. So they don't get to eat the foods that they're used to eating and the things that they like to eat. So that's what that was a symbol of, because we get a lot of calls from youth in the facilities or in foster homes, and what we try to encourage, and we will talk about like in RPPS, is to encourage the, resource parents to find out about the kid, and maybe even like once a month, twice a month, to cook like a food or a cultural dish that comes from where, that symbolizes and something that would make them, feel like they're at home. But it's different when you're going somewhere and you're told this is what you have to eat and you can only eat this and you can no longer eat this again. So that was the purpose of that exercise, and I see that it didn't go over anyone's heads with all the oohs and the ahs when we made ask you to swap your cards.
All right, now we're going to move on to the third card. So I want y'all to hold up the third card, which represents a tradition that is important to you. And we're all going to give you time to try to find someone around you who has the same tradition as you. You don't have to, so just try to talk amongst each other, see who practices the same holiday, same tradition, and then we're going to converge and see who was able to find a match.
They know what it is.
They know.
You know how hard it is?
You know me down when I do number 4.
All right, so we're gonna pull everyone back.
We're gonna come back together.
All
Did-
right.
Did anyone find anyone?
Raise your hand if you found someone of a match. Okay, so we have a couple. Raise your hand if you did not find a match. All right, so for those who did find a match, you will still be able to practice your tradition. Hooray! For those who did not find a match, unfortunately, you will not be able to practice that tradition unless you find someone who understands your tradition or can help support you as you practice it. So fortunately, you're gonna have to kind of wait that out until you find a partner.
And this is something that we get calls about because I had received a phone call of the youth in the STRTP, and this youth was they wanted to practice Wiccan, but they said that they weren't able to have the information and they couldn't have the Bible, and they actually had a right to practice the religion that they want. I mean, there are going to be certain rules and regulations. You can't impose your religion upon other people, but you do still have a right, even if you are the only one. So all these examples that we're using today are actually about real life complaints that we actually receive on our hotline from foster youth.
Mm-hmm. And oftentimes when foster youth are placed into placements, if they are not with people who understand their culture or understand the tradition, then typically they don't get the support that they need. So if, for example, a Muslim foster youth is placed with a Christian household who may not understand or know about any of their holidays, or understand, for example, the practice of wearing a hijab, how are they supposed to help support that youth to continue practicing that tradition? So it's really important for us to recognize that that happens to foster youth, that they have to go into a new environment where their background may not be understood, and in order for them to still practice, they have to find someone who understands, supports them, and will advocate for them as they continue to stay in touch with their tradition. So that's just one example of what something foster youth can experience, especially when it comes to practicing their traditions.
Okay, so one more. The last card is hold up the card of a person that you have a good connection with. Okay. So if your last name begins with A through L, put the card down face up on the table. If your last name begins with the letter M through Z, you put the card face down on the table. Okay. So for everyone whose last name begins with A through L, congratulations. The people that you have connections with, you're able to maintain those connections. If your last name begins with M through Z and your card is face down, you no longer have those connections once you enter the foster care system with those people that you had. You can't talk to them, you cannot contact them in any type of way. So you've lost that connection. And that's what happens again when kids go into foster care. And we get a lot of calls and they're saying, well, I'm not allowed to call this person because they're saying that I don't have a court order saying that I can. So what it is the right is that there has to be a court order saying that they cannot contact the person. There is not a list of, I can call these people. There would have to be a list, and it would have to be a court order of who the youth is not able to contact. So that, again, was what that experience was to represent, because this is what happens once they go in and they're not allowed to have people. And some of these people would probably be prime support people when these children are having child and family team meetings and doing case planning and trying to figure out the best outcomes for them. So again, that was just something we wanted to highlight. Mm-hmm. So we appreciate you all participating. Thank you so very much.
Yes, thank you all so much for participating in the activities. Yeah, you can clap. Hooray! Thank you for participating. All right, so we went over this activity to kind of show you all why our office exists, why the Foster Youth Bill of Rights exists, because these experiences that you all experienced through this activity are exactly what foster youth have gone through that led to passing the Foster Youth Bill of Rights. Because we recognize that these issues were happening and that we needed a law in order to protect these youth so that they can still maintain these connections that are really, really important to them, whether that's food, religion, tradition, social connections, etc. So now we're going to talk more about our population of foster youth in California.
Okay, so you can see the data basically on the slide that shows as of January 1st, 2021, and we're using all 2021 data, that there were 59, almost 60,000 children in foster care in the state of California, and that there are a lot of disproportionalities and disparities in the child welfare and the foster care system, and it continues to highlight the inequities in the system for certain populations of youth, more than others.
So one of the demographic pieces of data we're going to look at is based on race. So we're going to first take a look at our population for our children in California, broken down by race. So one thing we're going to take a look at is the distribution. So as you can see here, and you can see from the legend at the bottom, we have the category of Black African American youth, Alaskan Native American youth, Asian American youth, Hispanic Latino youth, Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander youth, white youth, and then also youth who identify as more than one race or multiracial. So this helps us kind of take a picture in our minds when we know the full population and distribution of youth in our state based on race. We can compare it to which youth actually enter the child welfare foster care system, and then by extension our probation system as well. So as we move forward, kind of remember these stats and try to take a look at what disproportionalities we can see, who is overrepresented in our system, and then what does that imply in terms of best practices with supporting this population of youth.
So again, this chart and data breaks it further down by percentage to show the representation and how the representation of certain populations, if you look at Black or African American youth, and you also, if you look at Native American and the populations related to the percentages of the youth that are in foster care in the state of California.
One thing we do want to highlight is that based and compared to that population of the previous slide, Black and African American children, their entrance into the child welfare system is ×4 the amount of their population within our state. And then for Native American children, that's ×2. And then as you can see from the graph as well, the majority of our youth identify as Hispanic and Latino, which is proportionate to our state population. So we can already see the two groups that are overrepresented within the child welfare system based on race. So now we're going to talk more about the probation system. And here we can see the same two groups, Black African American youth and Native American youth, are also overrepresented as well. But what is really important to note is that for Black and African American youth, it's actually ×5. So they're even more overrepresented in the probation system and with their contact with the juvenile justice system. So all of that to say that we recognize based on these statistics that there is going to be disproportionality, that there is disparity because certain youth of certain races, certain identity factors are being overrepresented in our systems. And since we know that they make up the majority of our system and are within that population, we have to make sure that our practices and make sure that our mindset is focused on serving this youth, but also addressing some of the systemic issues that led to their overrepresentation in the system. And that's what we're going to break down today and talk more about how we can apply that culture of humility, RPPS, and foster youth rights to address these issues.
So this next slide is just about the definitions of disproportionality and disparity, which again, we just talked about, and Shekinah did a great job of breaking down the information for you. But again, the underrepresentation or overrepresentation that we can see when we put the numbers next to each other, that if for certain populations to have less, but to have an overrepresentation in the system when you don't even have that many people in your population, it's higher inside of a system than it is altogether as a group, then that's very disproportionate. So that's the goal today, for us all to learn how to work together.
A question, Kendra. Do you find that darker pigmented children are more involved with law enforcement in a negative way?
Research, you want me or research? Research has shown it. I do a lot of research. Also, I would say yes, personal experience, lived experience, also well to share. I've navigated the probation system with a child. I have a son who went through the juvenile probation system in Sacramento County, and he was a darker skinned, and so yes. But also, again, education from research that I have done. I've done it to show that with bias is a really big factor that plays in. That's something that we're going to talk about today. But I would have to say yes, but it wouldn't just be because of that's just how I feel from my personal experience. It would just be from working with this population of youth and having been able to see it myself.
I was just gonna say the studies that I've read have also, they've not only talked talked about it with African American culture, but also with Latino culture.
Yeah, in my thesis, I talk about it, and I just say of color, and lately I've done like written articles, and I've just been like doing like BIPOC as well too, because it's not just that, but sometimes when you're talking, you can only focus, because that's what they want, but it's BIPOC for me, yes.
All right, so now that we know that there is an issue of disparity and disproportionality, what tools do we have as practitioners in this field to address these challenges? So we're going to take a look at both ends, what is best practice, and then also what the law says. So best practice states that cultural competence and cultural humility is a really great way for us to be able to support our youth, be able to recognize their differences in culture and background and identity, and still be able to provide them the services that they need while they are in foster care. And then on the other hand, we have the law, which mandates that we uphold foster youth rights and then also apply reasonable and prudent parent standard while we are upholding the youth's rights. So we're going to take a look at both and see how we can combine the two, best practice and law, in order to better serve our youth.
So cultural competence and cultural humility is what we're gonna get into talking about later. Like what you know about others' cultures, and what do you do to make sure that you know about other people's cultures. Cultural humility is just being willing to say, I don't know. Like humility was always like a big thing to me. It was something that I really had to work to learn to be humble. And now people say, oh, you're too humble, because then they say, what do you do? Oh, now you're too humble. But it's just being able to have the grace to say, you know what, I don't know, but tell me about yourself, or, what can I do to help you? And cultural competence is just to have the ability to understand. A lot of times when working with populations that are different, and when people don't want to ask questions, a lot of times people are not just like asking questions all the time because they have something to hide. But sometimes people fear of what could happen if they say the wrong thing. When talking to people, have to understand about intimidation. Because as I said, I navigated the system, and when I navigated the system, I didn't have everything that I have today. I didn't have the education, the college education, but because I was trying to navigate it and I needed to learn, that's what guided me to start going to school and start studying sociology to try to understand, to be able to be an advocate. And so to get that competence and to understand, but not just like for myself and for the race that I represented, but for all children who are represented like in this system, to have the competence to be able to just have and to learn how to help them. And again, when they're going into, we just talked about being removed from somewhere and going somewhere totally different. A lot of times children are placed with people of totally different ethnicities and races than them. And they have to navigate it. I think it's a wonderful thing, because I'm not going to say a proponent. I think children should be with who's going to love them and who's going to provide them the best care possible. So I don't want to break it up and say, well, this population should be here, but for the people who are providing the care for these children to have the competence and the humility to be able to give them what they need so they can still thrive and grow, and it doesn't even matter.
Thank you, Kendra. That was really beautifully said, and that ties in with our next activity as well. So as Kendra said, it's the responsibility of whoever is caring for that youth to kind of recognize their own background, and then also recognize how our own experiences impact the way we work with others. So as we all know, people are treated differently based on a lot of different factors. And so what we're going to do now is kind of do a little bit of a self-reflection on ourselves. So as you can see, we have an identity wheel, and you all have a blank sheet here. So I'm going to give you all some time to reflect on your own identities and reflect on some of the questions on which identities are important to you, how have you been impacted by your identities, have people treated you differently based on who you are, and then also connect it to how you, as someone who works in the field, can leverage your own experience, your own identities to better support our youth. So I'll give you all few moments to go ahead and fill that out. And during this time, feel free to talk with each other. We definitely don't want it to be, quiet and you're isolating yourself. If you want to fill it out, discuss with one another some of the questions that you have, and try to answer the questions through discussion. We definitely encourage it. So we'll give you some time to do the self-reflection. Awesome. All right, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. But again, feel free to fill this out. You get to keep this. It's for you to self-reflect on your own identities. But we do want to kind of answer the last question and kind of do a little bit of a poll. So if everyone can raise your hand if you ever felt or recognize that you've been treated differently based on any of these identities in the wheel. Okay. All right, thank you so much. So the purpose of this activity, again, is for us to do some self-inventory on what identities are important to ourselves, how we may be perceived by others, and then also how it impacts our work. And that's going to tie in with cultural humility and cultural competence. Because even though we all come from various backgrounds, various cultures, we have various appearances, we can still work to help support others, even though there are those differences. We just have to make sure to apply cultural humility and cultural competence, which Kendra and I will be going over some more. So what exactly is cultural competence? Well, it essentially is the ability to understand, communicate with, and effectively interact with people across cultures. It basically just means having those cross-cultural people skills to be able to make those personal connections, be able to recognize the differences in others, and work with others despite the fact. So this can be broken down into 4 various aspects, one being awareness, attitude, knowledge, and then the cross-cultural skills. So it comes from not only our mindset of how we engage with others, but also how our attitude is when it comes to learning new things, interacting with other people, and then our ability to learn more about those various cultures and be able to practice some of those skills. One thing that we really want to highlight is that certain minority groups, in this case, since we talked about race as a demographic, we're going to kind of focus on that a little bit. But regardless, all minority groups are often vulnerable to the structural and systemic barriers in our child welfare system. So as Kendra explained before, culture is an ongoing learning process where language, customs, values, and institutions influence beliefs, knowledge as opposition, and behaviors which are often looked by a group of other people. So that essentially means that whatever the dominant culture is, that's typically going to be what that culture is within that society, and it's our job to ensure that all of the other cultures that may not be dominant are represented. So not understanding another person's culture can result into stereotyping, can result in bias, and then also, especially with us as workers in the field, can also inadvertently result in harming our own clients as well. So we have to really make sure that cultural competence and humility are in our toolbox and that we're very mindful of practicing these when we're engaging with our population.
Again, cultural competence and cultural humility, very important. I myself, I didn't even know about this stuff until I was getting my undergrad degree in social work. And that's when they started talking about cultural competence and cultural humility and all these different things that I would need to know when I went out in the field as a social worker. So again, as I said earlier, it again, is just that self-evaluation. It's that commitment to check myself and to realize that there might be certain things that I might not know about people, and to understand the power dynamics and the power imbalances. And me, I from both sides now, with being a social worker and then working as an advocate, but then having to navigate the system as a parent with that lived experience, understanding it as well from both sides, but just knowing when there is a power imbalance or a power dynamic that people can be intimidated by it, and sometimes we might read intimidation as something else. So again, it's to check our biases and not to based on what we think, but to be able to learn about these other people and everyone that we have to work with and advocate for. It's important.
Mm-hmm. So how does cultural humility work within the context of child welfare and foster care? So we have to address it at not only a micro level, which is working one-on-one, meso, community level, and macro policy, systemic level. We work by applying it through all those different levels while we're learning, communicating, offering help, and making any decisions about professional and practice settings. So we have to recognize that it's not only just working with each other one-on-one and having that culture of humility one-on-one. We also have to recognize, too, that we have to walk it like we talk it. Also apply it with our community policies, whatever your organization's or agency's policies are. Address it through state level wide policies as well. So we have to make sure it's a multi-level approach, not just, oh, I'm a kind person and I want to learn about people's culture and I'm open to learning about everything, but we have to really understand that it's a systemic issue as well, not just a one-on-one issue. So that's essentially the kind of framework we want to work at is micro, meso, and macro, applying cultural humility and cultural competence.
So this slide is how can we apply cultural humility. So each of us has the responsibility to check our biases in order to successfully work with and support youth in the foster care system. So that includes taking, a self-inventory again, of the perceptions and the biases that we may have and addressing them through empathy, through asking questions, and empowering youth and families, which is the primary purpose of the system, to empower youth and families. So it's also important to keep an open mind and acknowledge that we don't know everything. And that's what humility is that I don't know everything, but I'm willing to learn it so that I can help empower you, and that's just the purpose of it. And that's basically all we said today on these multiple slides with cultural humility. But it's very important, to say it over and over because it is a very important part of the work that is done and working not only with the youth, but again, with the purpose of probation officers with this integrated core practice model, because you work with other groups of people too. We have a lot of representation today in this room, and so everyone has to be on the same accord. We can't have groups A and B doing one thing and then C and D doing the other things, because it's not going to work right together. So that's the whole point that we hope you guys received out of that. So.
Awesome. All right. So we went over the concept of best practice through applying cultural humility and cultural competence. Now we're going to talk about the fun stuff, the law. So we're going to talk more about the Foster Youth Bill of Rights. So as we shared before, the reason why the Foster Youth Bill of Rights was passed is because there was recognition that youth needed these rights, because unfortunately, there were some issues that were going on in the foster care system that led to negative outcomes for these youth. So through the advocacy of California Youth Connection youth advocate members, they were able to pass legislation that not only created our office, but also created the Foster Youth Bill of Rights. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. As you can see in front of you, we have a lot of publications breaking down the rights. If you want to know the actual legislative language, you can check out Welfare and Institutions Code 16001.9, or if you want more youth-friendly and more colorful publications, you can just check out the publications in front of you. So one major highlight is that recently, in October 2, 2019, AB 175, or Assembly Bill 175, was passed. And what that Assembly Bill did is that it updated the Foster Youth Bill of Rights to over 41 rights for youth in foster care. The California Foster Youth Bill of Rights is the most comprehensive Foster Youth Bill of Rights in the world, which is pretty amazing, with our state leading some of that was a really cool progressive Bill of Rights. So what AB 175 did is not only added to the Bill of Rights, but it also reorganized, clarified, and expanded the rights, and specifically separated it into various categories. So not only is it easier for youth to understand, but it's easier to disseminate the information to youth and other stakeholders as well. What it also did was it mandated our office to update our own curriculum and our own forms of materials with teaching youth about the rights as well as stakeholders. So as a result of AB 175, what our office did was we held focus groups throughout the state, and we asked youth in foster care what kind of materials they would want to see, they would want to have in order to learn more about their rights. And surprisingly, a lot of the youth actually wanted printed publications. We'd assumed that they would want something digital, like an app or something like that, but all of them wanted a printed publication to explain what the rights were. And they also wanted the publications to be appropriate for them based on their age. So we were able to develop a teen handbook, a coloring book, a pocket accordion, as well as a poster for the youth as well. And all of that here is available not only in front of you, but also at the back of the table if you wanted Spanish publications, and then also on our website as well. So if you all would like to order some more for your agencies or for your own youth, you can call our office or also submit an online form, and we'll be able to send you publications. And they're all, again, for free.
Free. Please call.
Yes, please call and help us get rid of them. We have thousands of them.
Shekinah,
Yes.
do you believe that providers, resource families, and social workers are intimidated by the current foster bill of rights?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I would say sometimes there's a lot of discussion about how do I balance the Foster Youth Bill of Rights and ensure the safety of these youth. That's typically the conversations that we see is concern that we're giving too many rights to the youth to the point where their safety is at risk. And that's typically some of the conversations and some of the discussion that we've had with some providers and some workers. To that we say, ultimately the goal is to raise our young people to become functioning adults. And in order for us to do that, we have to give them the ability to be independent. Otherwise, when they're grown up and they're adults and they're supposed to be independent and be able to handle themselves, typically we see that they cannot because they've been so restricted from that growth as young people that suddenly when they're thrown into the adult world, it's overwhelming for them, they don't know what to do, and they don't know how to navigate society as a whole. So to that I say, we definitely understand some of the concerns of trying to balance safety, trying to balance the rights, but ultimately we have to remember the long-term goal, and then we also have to remember that we have other tools as well to help us support these youth. The law, which is the Foster Youth Rights, and also RPPS, Reasonable and Prudent Parent Standard. We can actually address some of those safety concerns through reasonable and prudent parenting. So that's a really good question. So I'd say, yeah, kind of, that would be the answer to that.
If I can add a little, just to know, like, we take upholding the rights very seriously, and we're only upholding youth rights that should be upheld. I've been a teenager before, so I know sometimes I think I have a right to certain things. So I'll provide an example because, okay, we'll just go into the categories and then I'll just talk about it, okay? So as Shekinah was talking about, the different categories, I had a call one time from a county that they wanted to make sure they were not violating a youth's rights because she said that they were because they took her airsoft pistol from her, okay? Now, no, that is not, so that's what I just want you all to understand. That's why we do get a lot of pushback, but we're not just, if you just call us and you say my rights, we're going to investigate, and then a lot of times it's counseling and educating the youth as well, because in that instance, this youth was 16 years old. Not even old enough to legally own an airsoft pistol, much less possess it in the foster home. And she told them that it was her right. And so they called, and I told them that no, it was not, and that they could remove it, and if they called, it would be they wouldn't have to worry about a violation or a letter from the ombudsman or anything, because that is not a right. So specifically, we're here to empower foster youth, but also to empower the resource parents and to assist the social workers and probation officers. It's not our job to say you're not doing this. We want to help. To make sure that the rights are being upheld. So that's more of our position, and we're looking at it, and we're not just every time a youth calls and says that their rights are being violated, we're going to investigate and make sure that it is a rights violation, because like I said, a lot of times the kids call because they just think that they can call because they think it's their right being violated, but again, it wasn't. So I just didn't know if that would provide a little bit more context regarding our position on upholding youth rights. Yes, okay.
Yeah, federal laws, state laws, local laws, those still apply. We don't have any purview over that, so those all still apply when we're upholding the youth's rights.
So,
I'm always been curious about this one, to make a youth stay in the juvenile hall because they can't find you a home. So I know that we have youth that were reported that they got kicked out of SCRTP, they have to take them back to the home. But what does that actually mean? If they refuse, do they actually have a right that you cannot keep them in a juvenile hall?
if they have not committed a crime, now that's where it happens, because I did have a case I had to research. A youth was kept in juvenile hall. the parent called and said that my child is being kept in juvenile hall because they didn't have a placement. But once I did the research, that was not the reason why the youth was still in a juvenile hall. But it is a violation of a youth rights that they have not done anything and they're just kept in a locked facility in juvenile hall because there's not a placement for them, because at the state level, we have technical assistance with CCR where we could help to provide placements. Even if it's a youth that's more difficult to place, we still can provide technical assistance through community care reform to help. So to answer the question, I looked to make sure the youth was in juvenile hall because the youth had committed an offense at the STRTP. But to keep a youth, just to put a youth in juvenile hall because you don't have anywhere else to place them is a violation of the Foster Youth Bill of Rights, yes. It's to keep a youth in a locked facility, and if you don't, to put them in a placement because they have other STRTP placements, but to lock them up because you don't have a placement for them is a violation of their rights.
We had a similar situation, but this particular youth we inherited, the youth who required 300 form came to the offense. This particular youth was in custody for a very long time, actually nearing 1 year, because we could not find anywhere for the youth to go to an SPRT that was willing to accept the youth. We did go through the technical calls, we went through all the processes and whatnot, but it was a very complicated situation because we had a history in other SPRTP residents fall under 300 care. And that is, in that situation, I mean, eventually we did find somewhere to take a place that was willing to take this youth, but in that instance, as long as we're covered, right?
You did all the steps, and that's all we ask. Because if you can't, you can't, but you did the steps. You did the TA. It sounds like you did what we call the deeper dive, because we have a list of questions that we asked the STRTP, because still, just because of behavior, there's still certain questions we can do a deeper dive as to why they're denying these placements. So it looks like you did all the steps, but if you hadn't done anything, now for a county that just left a youth sitting there and they didn't try to do anything, that's a violation. But we're not going to fault anyone for trying, because again, we investigate. That's like the primary purpose. Is even if it doesn't get all the way to an investigation, we're going to screen. We're going to look to see, oh, this is being done. I've had calls where they say the county isn't doing anything, and I look in the notes, social workers and wrote all this stuff. I did this for the youth. I talked, I sent this, requested services, but they're calling me saying that nothing's been done. So when I look in CWS CMS, that's what I look in there and see. I'm not going to investigate. I'm going to screen. I'm going to document, and I'm going to close it out, because if the county is doing their due diligence, then it's not for me to mess with the county. It's for me to work to see, well, how can I help them so that we can get this resolved? But we're not going to say you're violating youth rights if you actually can't and you're trying. No.
Yeah, and that goes back to our jurisdiction. Again, we try to informally resolve. So we're not in the business of throwing the law book at people and trying to, get people to comply. We want to work with agencies. We want to work with the youth team to help, because we're all here having the same mission, is to support our youth. So we want to make sure that everyone is able to play that role to help support. So that's the main role of our office, is to make sure we can resolve it by working together at the lowest level possible if we can.
Okay, we have another question.
Okay.
Do you think we are doing the youth a disservice as to them not being held accountable for their actions? How are we making them into functioning, healthy adults who contribute to society?
That's a good question. So
I'm trying to understand what is the point where
oh yeah.
I've been in probation for a long time, like close to 30 years, and I think that a lot of people have a brain that accountability is locking them up. And I'm always re-emphasizing within our department and with our partners that accountability can look differently depending on what the situation is. So it feels like that question is from old thinking, that that's the only way to hold a youth accountable is by locking them up and taking them into custody. And I just wish we would get away from that thinking. Because it could be a conversation with the victim. It could be, a counseling session. It could be different forms of holding a youth accountability. It doesn't have to be locking them up.
Thank you.
And do you understand what trauma does
does over and over. They have a bunch of therapists, they have a bunch of social workers. You understand what all of that does to that brain. So that's-
I appreciate those comments, and what I want to say is that we do want everyone to be accountable, but accountability for everyone doesn't always look the same. And I want to also say, too, like I said when I answered the other question, I said based on research. So regardless of my lived experience and everything that I've gone through, I've gone to school, and even though I'm a sociology major in graduate school, I took all of my electives in criminal justice because prior to me not, being on the right path, I was a criminal justice major. Like, that was what I wanted to do with my life. Sociology was the closest, like, after my life changed, that I could come and still work in this system. So I took, in grad school, I took sociology of law. So I have an understanding of the need for law. I know that we have a need for a justice system, a criminal justice system. Never would I say that we don't. But when we look again and we talk about trauma-informed care, these are children, these are youth. I talk about like how these kids are looked at, how they're treated. I talk about adultification of BIPOC children. So when I talk about accountability, it should still be, I'm big on restorative justice. I'm big on healing, like the community healing and all that. People need to make amends and be accountable for what they did, but you don't learn, prison does not rehabilitate. You have to rehabilitate yourself. I spent time in prison, and the prison did not rehabilitate me. It was something that I had to want within myself to be able to change. You can put a person in a room for 500 days. They can come out and still do the same thing. It's not making them any more accountable than when you put them in there. But you have to make them understand what they did and why it was wrong. That's where the accountability comes in. Yes.
I just want to re-emphasize that, and I'll share a story that brings me shame that our county did. And we had a youth, if you think about the kids that we have in probation, most of them come from the 300 zone. And they've been removed from the home sometimes 3 or 4 years ago. So we had this young man who's developmentally delayed. He functioned as a 6-year-old. And over time, initially he was with grandmother, but she couldn't care for him anymore. And as he became a teenager, he started acting out aggressively because he was unable to verbalize his anger, and so he would get physical. So she could no longer care for him, and he was at a local placement, and he was able to be convinced by other people in the home to commit a burglary. He was so running on instincts that when they broke in, it was literally a candy shop, Rocket Fizz. He sat down, started drinking and eating the candy. The other ones that convinced him to do it, they took off the ring. So he was caught, charged with burglary, came to the facility. Before I got there, please believe this disclaimer, his case was sent, and they immediately made him a 602 board without giving him the opportunity at informal handling. A 602 board for a person that functions as a 600 and had him in our facility with 9 murders. I mean, think about that. When you're using accountability, you're thinking about juvenile hall, you're putting him in, we need juvenile hall.
Yeah.
I'm always going to ask
Yes.
you juvenile hall.
Yes.
For the rapists and the murderers, you do not need them for these youth that have been removed because they were neglected and abused. And then as they function into normal teenagers, they are going to act out like normal teenagers do, and then they get put into our system faster. We shouldn't be having those kids in our home. And I know that my friend over there knows that because I pushed that up. They don't belong in our
Who? Oh, did you have a comment? Yeah.
I just want to say, though, I believe this is a larger conversation to have. I wish we had a workshop for that. Because it's a hot topic among me, my friends, and my colleagues, my neighbors, my family. You work for probation, oh, let's talk about this. My neighbor wants to talk. And there's just really never a space for it. Like, I just wish that would have been on the curriculum. It's a hot topic. And I'll just say, having worked in the field and having been around it all my life, being born and raised in Oakland, it's not what it was. We're not hooking and booking. they're not left in a dark room. There's some amazing things that probation is doing that was not happening, and I just don't feel like probation has a voice. I always feel like we're the silent partner in community improvement and juvenile rehabilitation. And we shouldn't be the elephant in the room. We shouldn't be pointed at, because we're all in it together. I mean, we have bad teachers, bad priests, bad foster parents, bad judges, X, Y, and Z. So I hope we can get together and share that and be a community where we're all kind of on the same page. Instead of pointing the finger.
I think probation officers are awesome. We're not pointing the finger. I used to want to be one myself. We're just, that is not what we are here to say. We're here just to say, especially with the foster care system, we're going to more trauma-informed care. A lot of these kids come into this system because of trauma, and then they're further traumatized. We're not saying we don't want to step on your toes. We're not telling you how to do your job. It's just because of the type of care and the treatment that they need, it can't just be a cookie cutter. And even if it is like better, it can help some of the youth. I'm glad to see it, because I know, like I said, I navigated this system, but I'm still here because I want to help change it. I've gone through it. And it has gotten better, the things that I can see. And it's coming with a more trauma-informed lens, because these kids have been traumatized. They've been removed from places, and even if the place that they were in was a bad place, it still was a comfortable place. It was what they knew. It was a comfortability. So when they're taken and they're gone, when they're arrested as a child, as an adult, it's traumatic to be arrested and to not know, to be able to ask the questions as an adult, but even as a child, it's even more so, because you don't even know what questions it is that you really need to ask. And what we do is, when I talk about adultification, we put these kids on caps like they're grown and functioning adults, and they're not. It's not you, it's just we're trying to say that we all work together. That's why we're here, so that we can all work together to help serve these youth in a trauma-informed way. But we're not here to point fingers.
Can I just mention something? I know exactly where he's coming from, probation as well. It's not that you guys are going to do together, but it's the society in general, and it is some other entities or other agencies that they just don't look at us like that partner, like we want to be, unfortunately. And so we want to be more involved. We want to put our hands, and we want to get in the pot. We want to be more effective in that way. Yes, you're absolutely right. Probation has changed. We look way different now than we did, even a decade ago with MI, with the trauma-informed, all of the things that we're doing today. But a lot of it is, and it said, it said earlier, what you guys said earlier, and you'll say, oh, social workers, like, okay, well, we're all, most of us are probation officers. Or if we're in a child welfare, it's always social workers. It's like, well, what about probation? It's like we feel like we're left out.
Well, you're not.
No, I know you feel that way, but I think that we still can see it. We can still see that we are left out sometimes, and they don't see us as that particular provider to be able to give those types of services. And we want to, but we want to be seen in a different way. We want to be in that. In the mix like that, so that we can help those youth, so that we can show that it's not just child welfare or social workers that are being able to provide the services. Probation wants to be there too, and we want to show that it's not just about what they did to get on probation, it's about what we can do to help them and their families moving forward.
I appreciate that. I'm going to get your contact information, so if I have an issue in your county, I can call you. But let me tell you, if you open up your handbook, you have to forgive us, because we might be a little nervous. We should be saying social workers and probation officers. If you look in the handbook, you're going to see probation officers in it. Open it up and know that you're included. Probation is at the forefront of this. Yes. we're here to work with you. You are at the forefront, and we want you all to be involved. But that's why it's in there, but it just recently changed. You have to understand for our office, like if you listen when I said, when I came to that office, the ombudsperson was not even serving probation youth until I came in there and started going into those institutions and telling those youth, and then they started calling us. So it's a new relationship. I'm the juvenile justice specialist. I'm just one person in our office. So we're expanding and it's changing. But with the publications, and when we say social workers, we're supposed to say probation officers too. It's synonymous. It's the back forward slash and then that. Yes.
But I feel like, especially with child welfare, we really want them to know that include us.
And we will. I'm gonna get your information.
We want that. I do a lot of, like, pre-COVID, I used to do a lot of training with the state. And every time it would be social workers, so I said, okay, probation, I'm right here, probation. You know, it's like, we're here in the room too. We are here, we're trying to do the work as much as you're trying to do the work. That's why we're here.
Mhm.
And we want people to see probation used differently. There's not kids that are just getting in trouble. Teachers that's talking about all the trauma for teenagers, like, it started when they were children. I mean, when they're just babies.
Right, in the home. Mhm.
They're traumatized as teenagers. They've been traumatized for years.
Mhm.
I'm traumatized as an adult sometimes. Like, you're talking about removing me from one space to another. I'm like, wait, hold on. You know, I get like that. Imagine a developing mind.
Mhm.
You know, so yeah, we get it. We just need to continue the process, continue the goals, and get everybody that's new coming into probation with that new mindset. Because there are still people that have an older mindset of, you know, they're in trouble, they need to be, you know, punished and such. That's not the way, you know, that our society is working these days.
And that's true. And I'm gonna take another question, but I'm gonna tell you, that's how we came to this conference today. Because for the past 2 years, I've been reaching out to probation officers in all 59 counties, asking to do training for probation officers from my office. And then by the grace, I met this woman right here and got the whole California, okay? So I have all y'all here. So this is something that we have been working on. That's what I want you to know, just because it's not here, but I've been reaching out myself, calling and doing the trainings and saying, hey, I did Sacramento County, I've done Riverside County, I've done Ventura County. So that's what I'm saying. But I'm only one person, and if I call one county and the probation officer, he didn't want to do the chief probation, I'm not going to call out the county, but he didn't want to do the training. He was like, well, what are you going to talk about? And then I said, well, could you call us back? He never called back. So I can only do what I can do too. It's a two-way. But again, I'm going to get your contact information, okay? Yes, please. Sorry.
First, I just want to acknowledge the beautiful passion that's in this room to serve kids
Mm-hmm.
and youth. And you guys, everybody in this room does the hard work, and it's really amazing. I'm grateful for all the help. And then secondly, I want to maybe reframe that question that triggered this beautiful conversation. And that maybe that person wasn't talking about it in the context of they need to be punished, they need to serve their time. But maybe they were talking about it in the context of this Bill of Rights and how it can be challenging to simultaneously support this Bill of Rights and feel like you're holding kids accountable in a way that lets them learn and grow in the same way we might do for our own children. It is challenging, and I think you guys are going to speak to that, would be my guess.
Yes.
And that's what I think parent standards probably.
Yes, the RPPS. So real quickly, for the sake of time, I'm just going to talk about the categories of the Foster Youth Bill of Rights. So what AB 175 did was it categorized it to make it easier to identify, especially for youth, like if they might have had, a rights violation. So they have the personal rights, and then there's the Indian Child Welfare Act, which is the ICWA, sexual orientation, gender identity expression for SOGI, the education rights, sexual and reproductive health, mental health rights, their health rights, court case plans, family connections, and my favorite, adulthood and money management. Because as I said, I aged out of foster care at the age of 18 in Sacramento County, and back then there was no AB 12. So it was just like you were out. I tried to go to school, but I had to work. So I wasn't able to go to college and do the things that I had to do back then. But I didn't know anything like about saving money or like doing anything or like navigating life So just so grateful for like AB 12 and with me, with encouraging, youth too, to take advantage of it. Take those extra 3 years, go to college, get your verification letter, go to school, so that at least when you exit foster care, you could already have like a bachelor's degree and at least have a step up in the world than just coming out and working all these jobs, fast food, and then we all know like people who are in the foster care system have a higher propensity of being in the justice system. Like it just navigates out. You come from here and you come to there, but it's just because when stuff is inequitable. My life has just so changed since I've just been here and just go to work every day and just do what it is I'm supposed to do and not working at the chicken place and this place and not satisfied and just not happy. It's about personal satisfaction, and people can change and they can be productive and they can be better. And so that's why it's really important to me, because I navigated this system and it took me a while to get here today, and I just want to be able to provide these youth with a faster track to be able to get here and to be able to give back. So.
One of the things that I've heard in the training class and agenda, probation corps and supervisor corps, is all these additional rights. Now they have 41 rights. These don't apply to probation kids. Those apply to the Juanito child welfare kids, because our kids are dangerous. Our kids use cell phones in a dangerous way, and so there's some rights that can be overlooked because of other safety concerns with our kids. And so some of them are kind of glossed over. Some of them, they say, well, I really don't explain much because I don't want them to ask me questions about it, because it's not that I want the kids to have cell phones. It's not that some of the things that the kids are asking for is a challenge, and some make it difficult for probation officers to feel like they can do their work. So what are your comments about that?
Yeah, so I think one thing that I always share is to kind of consider like the order of decision making that we always encourage people to think about. So the first would be always to consider any existing laws, of course, and then any existing court orders. Because again, the only way that any of these rights can be null and void is if there is a court order made by a judge either limiting or restricting these rights completely. After you consider that, you then have to consider, how do we uphold these foster youth rights? And then for any additional setting up, for example, certain barriers or any reasonable limitations, that would be under reasonable and prudent parent standard. So one example with the cell phone usage. If there is no court order limiting that youth's ability to use a cell phone, then that youth has the ability to use a cell phone. You cannot tell the youth you're not allowed to use a cell phone, because that would be a violation of the right, because there's no court order allowing that to be taken away. However, under RPPS, you can have reasonable limitations. You can tell that youth, bedtime is at 9 p.m., so your phone's going to be turned off and put away. You can tell that youth you cannot use your phone unless you finish your homework, do your chores in the house, and then you can play on your cell phone. So I think sometimes, because these youth are system involved, we kind of overthink the ability for us to make a parenting decision. But just think to yourself, what kind of reasonable parenting decision would you make for a youth not involved in the system? And then apply that to a youth who is involved in the system, and then just add that additional layer of being trauma-informed. So as we get more into the presentation, we're going to talk more about how RPPS aims to address that, because the concerns of the youth safety and liability tends to make us feel so restricted from being able to provide these youth normalcy. And we want to make sure to move towards that instead of treating them differently than their peers not in foster care or not on probation, which is what we're trying to do now and where the shift is going. Really good question. All right.
Okay. I think it's game time, because we need to
talking
lighten
a
up
lot.
the mood.
Time to-
Okay. We need to lighten up the mood.
So as y'all see in front of you, you have a neon, well, it's supposed to be red, but I guess pink red card, and then a neon green card. Kendra and I will be sharing some scenarios with you all, and you have to determine if you think it's a foster youth rights violation. Yes means that it's not a violation, so the green means that it is not a violation, it's good to go. The red means that it is a violation and there is a problem with the scenario. And all of these scenarios that we're sharing with you are based on real cases that our office has had. But the names, of course, have been changed.
Yeah, random names. Okay. So, Anthony is placed in an STRTP that purchases all hygiene and grooming products in bulk. He asks to have shampoo and conditioner that is made specifically for his hair type. The staff tells Anthony that he must use the products in the bathroom. Is this a foster youth Bill of Rights violation?
Oh, so red means it is a violation.
Red is it
So,
is a
and no
violation,
go. And then green is.
means it's not.
Yeah. I know it's a little river. So red, not good. Green, good. Good to go.
I would probably go with the majority. I give hints. I would probably go with the majority. But if you did say that this was a foster youth Bill of Rights violation, you would be correct, because foster youth do have the right to have products that are specific to their hair type. So you can't just buy all the products in bulk. This specifically comes into play. We have a lot of youth who are Black or African American who are not able to use the bulk type hair products. It might not work for them. I know I have a specific type of hair, and I can't use Suave and different types of stuff. But when I was in foster care, that's what I did have to use. I didn't have a choice. I had to use the products that were provided, but at this point, it's a violation, and they do have the right, if they need something that's specific to their hair type, they are able to have that. It should be provided to them. So
One thing I want to add is that sometimes we get questions of, well, what if my youth is asking for like a really expensive salon grade type professional hair care? And to that we say that, so having a really professional, like expensive hair care, that would not be considered a foster youth right. That's where you can use our PPS, because there are certain hair products that are made for certain hair types, and we have professional grade, we have middle grade that's used for regular people who are not hairstylists. So from there, you can utilize our PPS to say, okay, I recognize that you need this hair type, this hair kind of product for your hair. Here's the grade, the mid grade that we can afford. So are you going to be okay with this? And then working with that youth to like narrow down the branding. So just wanted to highlight that, because we tend to get a lot of calls from resource parents saying that they can't afford certain hair care products, or their youth are saying that they want these types of more expensive products. But again, everything is on a scale. So as long as that hair product is specific for that youth, is able to give them their hairs, gets the nourishment that it needs, it's made specifically for them. The grade of hair products, again, it would be an RPPS decision. So that's where the balance comes in of upholding the rights, and then also as a parent, what kind of hair care products are you going to buy your kid? The really more expensive salon, if you can afford it, awesome. But if it's just mid-grade and it still does the job, then that's fine as well. Okay, here's the next scenario. Monica gets into a fight with a classmate. She and the other student are sent to the principal's office. Monica tries to explain her side of the story, but the principal immediately suspends her for 3 days without giving an explanation. Is this a foster youth Bill of Rights violation? Okay, so it looks like a lot of people are saying it's not a violation. In this case, it is a violation because we're going to consider the education code. So the education code applies to all youth who are attending a California public school. It doesn't matter if you're a foster youth, probation youth, whatever. If you are a public school student, you actually have the right to have a proceeding prior to suspension. So you have the right to have an informal conference, sometimes also known as a hearing before getting suspended. You have the right to know the reason for the suspension, the evidence regarding your suspension, and then also the right to share your version of the events to whoever is overseeing that informal conference or hearing. And then you also have the right to not be suspended for more than 5 consecutive days or more than 20 days in a school year. So this is the part where we have to think about not only the Foster Youth Bill of Rights, but also any existing state laws that protect our youth. So in this case, this applies to all public school students. So this would be a foster youth rights violation, because the Foster Youth Bill of Rights also covers whatever existing state laws apply to protect youth. That one was a tricky one, though. We tend to get that one tripped up on that one. Okay,
You gave me all the good ones.
oh, sorry.
So Caleb returns to his foster home after going on a school field trip. The resource parents search his backpack to make sure he's not hiding anything inappropriate. They do this whenever he leaves the house because they want to make sure he's being safe and following the rules. Is this a Foster Youth Bill of Rights violation? No, red means it is a violation. The green would mean that it's not a violation. Red,
Red is yes, it's a violation.
it's a violation.
Yes.
Yes, it would be a violation because the searches should not be done unless there is a reasonable and legal reason. Searching a used backpack just to make sure that they're not hiding anything in the backpack is a violation of the Foster Youth Bill of Rights. Now, if they smelled marijuana in the backpack, then of course, by all means, they could search the backpack or saw something that they, smelled something, or like if the youth came in and his eyes were red and they had reasonable legal to believe that he was under the influence or he might be hiding something in his backpack, then to search it, but just not every time a youth is going in and out of a house or facility for their stuff to be searched without a reasonable and legal reason. And if they are being searched, it should be by a probation officer. So we're not saying that searches should not be done, but it has to be reasonable and legal, and the probation officer should be the one that is conducting the search.
Okay, I'm laughing inside to myself because my oldest child, I searched his backpack for like a full 90 days. But he's my child, but I searched his backpack for a full 90 days, so I guess I'm still in violation.
Well, no, because you still have
Why can't,
you have.
if I had a child in my house that was hanging out with him, I would search their backpack too, because you guys are hanging out with him. So, but that's fine.
If you had a reasonable and legal reason that you felt during that 90 days that you should have been searching, because I've searched stuff too. I was like, keep your door open. I know, that's what I'm saying. So don't think that I'm just, but that's where RPPS comes in as well. But it's just, if you have a reason that you want to search it, if you said 90 days, you didn't say every day of their life, right? So there was something that you were, right. So there it goes. That's how it balances out.
Awesome. Next one.
Next one.
All right, next one. Vanessa is placed in a foster home. The resource parent decides to take her cell phone away and will not allow her to call or text without close supervision. There is no court order limiting or restricting Vanessa's phone access or communication, but the resource parent is still worried that she will contact inappropriate people. Is this a Foster Youth Bill of Rights violation? All right. So it looks like majority said it's a violation, and you all would be correct. So as we described before, only a judge via a court order can limit any of the rights in the Foster Youth Bill of Rights. So in this case, if the resource parents are concerned that this youth is going to be contacting inappropriate people, one thing they could do under RPPS is talk to the youth about safe practices with using a cell phone, especially nowadays technology is very widespread. We have young kids using phones and knowing how to use computers. Just talking about internet safety, computer safety, being able to talk to the youth about what their expectations are, put phone away at 9 p.m., no texting or calling people at midnight until you wake up at 8 a.m. in the morning to go to school. A parent can make those reasonable limitations, but they cannot just confiscate the phone because, again, there is no court order limiting that communication for Vanessa.
Can they
Restrict sites?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like parental block, parent
Yes.
block, yeah, for inappropriate sites. That
Yes.
is an RPPS thing that can be done, yes.
That's a parenting decision.
Yep.
So, just a muddy
Uh-huh.
So some of my colleagues in congregate care have SPRTPs that serve girls who are being pimped out and prostituted. That's been a really tough issue for them to navigate because the organizations are afraid of violating, like they don't want to violate the kids' rights. However, these young women are often calling their pimps to come pick them up or occasionally recruiting other girls. It's a really difficult, complex population to work with. And there's a lot of confusion about how to interpret the prudent parent standard in that kind of circumstance.
There's a
Well-
whole entire ACL
Yeah.
that actually describes best practices for working with CSEC youth.
Yeah.
I think it's in our presentation.
So with CSEC, it's a little bit different, and that's why we say we can't do cookie cutter because it's not cookie cutter, because everything doesn't apply. So we can't just take a cookie cutter and apply it to all these kids. So we have policy and a whole ACL about guidelines for CSEC phone usage, because we understand that, and we want to keep the youth safe as well. But we can't just say because a certain population of youth aren't able to have a phone because they might call their pimp, that all of the youth. So we have to, make it specific. So we do have guidelines available on our state website for Department of Social Services on CSEC phone usage that you might find helpful. And you can always call our office. We'd be more than happy to work with the other departments and to get you additional information. I actually reviewed when they were putting out the new guidelines for the trauma-informed care with the police for CSEC. I actually was reviewed it to make sure everything before it went. So it was a part of that, and so they have a lot of materials that would be helpful to you with the population that you serve.
Yeah, I don't serve.
Well, I mean that they serve, your colleagues, yes.
I
But
appreciate knowing that
Yes.
they're in that accommodation circle. Check those especially difficult populations to support.
Yeah,
yes.
definitely.
There's a question up there, sir.
My understanding is there's a difference between cell phones like the youth phone themselves, what we're given, and if the resource family, for an example, are the ones that purchase the phone for them to use while they're there, they have a little bit more leeway in taking or restricting access to that cell phone, provided they have access to a phone, house phone or something like that in the event that they need it. Does the Bill of Rights take that into consideration?
Yes. So for example, it's not a right for youth to be given a phone. So for example, resource parents are not mandated to buy a phone, purchase a phone for youth and give it to them. So as long as there is a phone available for the youth that allows them to exercise their rights of communication, technically speaking, the rights are being upheld. Of course, for practicality reasons, it might be more difficult to have just a house phone because you have therapists calling, the CASA calling, social worker calling the house phone at all. And that might make it just a little bit more inconvenient in terms of practicality. So that's one of the reasons why we really want to ensure that people knowing that using a phone is not just, just to give the youth the phone just to have it, but just to know that this is the most common mode of communication nowadays in our digitized age. And we want to make sure that youth have the competence to know how to use it. But technically speaking, yes, as long as a phone is available within the home, for the youth to exercise their rights, then the rights would be upheld through that way. So there is a little bit of leeway in terms of the fact that resource parents do not have to purchase a phone for the youth. There is a great program called the I Foster Free Cell Phone Program that I actually helped create the bill analysis for that provides free phones to youth in foster care. So if a resource parent does not want to purchase one or doesn't have the funds, they can buy it for that youth and be able to send it out to them. So we could share that information later. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, real quick, I also wanted to add with the cell phones, it's just as long as they have a phone that they can use to make private and confidential phone calls, because that's the right, and I have youth that call from STRTPs to make complaints, and I can hear the staff in the background sitting right there, and that's not a private, confidential phone call. So that's just what we want to ensure, that they do have that access.
That's good, because that's one of the examples that I think of when we've had youth complaining about access to the phone or having their cell phone taken away. And the program will typically say, well, we have the house phone, we can use it anytime. But if they can't if they have to sit in the day room or the living room.
Yeah, that would be a problem.
Well, they make this phone call, that would make sense because it meets the requirement.
For probation, you would say, for instance, if the youth went into the SBRTP not only having access to cell phone, goes on a home, weekend visit idea, comes back with the phone, parent says, I didn't provide that phone to them, does the SBRTP have the right to confiscate and or probation? Because there's no established knowledge from the parent or whatnot that here's the phone to stay communicated, maintain communication with you. Does probation and or the SBRTP staff have the right to confiscate that phone and or as well as the terms and conditions reflect that order?
So I'm assuming the youth themselves acquired the phone, they purchased it themselves. Yeah, so in that case, again, if there's no court order limiting that youth's ability to access a phone, then it would be a violation to completely confiscate it, especially because that youth also purchased it themselves. However, under our PPS, the probation officer and the youth team can definitely set terms and conditions for using the phone. So, for example, they can, especially if it's, for example, in an STRTP and they have curfew or something, they have to put the phone away at a certain time, that's fine, and that's something that they can do without it being a violation. So just to consider whatever court orders exist, if there's no court order, then the youth can use a phone, and that's where our PPS comes in, setting those boundaries and limitations for everything else. I know we keep repeating that, it's very vague, which is very hard. There's no handbook of this is exactly the type of policy that you should use for your youth, because as Kendra said, it's very based on that youth themselves, and it's gonna be very dependent on the circumstances. But one thing that we can say for sure that's very clear is if there's no court order, they have the ability to have that phone.
They can have a phone unless there's a court order that says that they cannot have a phone.
Yeah.
Can the STRTP have a regulation that they hold the phone, the staff, like they have it somewhere, and the kiddo can ask for their phone when they want to make a call?
They have the right to have their cell phone.
Right to have it in their possession.
Because what's going to happen when all the staff is busy or somebody's de-escalating someone and then this youth wants to use their phone, they feel like they have the right to make a phone call and there's no one available to their phone. Again, unless they're not able to have it, and we understand there might be some special circumstances where some youth might not be able to keep theirs and something might happen. Can you keep my phone for me on a voluntary basis, but not just to restrict the usage of the phone like that? Now, understanding if the youth has done something, like we say, with RPPS, you can restrict the usage of the phone, but not just to keep the phone like it's not theirs. Overnight, now we say, like if every night at 9 o'clock we collect the phone so you don't have it, you get it again in the morning, but not like during the daytime, just to consistently have it, no. Okay. So, listen, and this might be a trick question, I hope it's not, so I'll say that to everyone, okay? Jordan comes out as a trans girl and goes by she, her pronouns. However, Jordan's birth certificate and previous court documents do not have the same pronouns. The staff refers to Jordan with the she, her pronouns. Is this a foster youth Bill of Rights violation? Oh, yes, everyone got it right. Okay, no, that would not be a violation because youth have the right to be addressed by the pronouns that they choose. So if Jordan chooses to be addressed by she, her, it's not a violation for the staff to address her by she, her as well, even though that's not what's reflected on the court documents or the birth certificate.
Awesome. All right, and this will be the last scenario. Fatima takes Adderall in the mornings to help manage her ADHD. She wakes up one morning and decides she doesn't want to take it anymore. The probation officer tells her that she cannot attend drama club until she resumes taking the medication or talks to a doctor. Is this a foster youth Bill of Rights violation?
Yes.
Okay, I'm seeing all red. So yes, you all would be correct. This is a violation. So if you can see in the mental health section, it states that youth have the right to refuse to take medication. Nobody can punish them for it. So best practice in this situation would be to engage with the youth and ask Fatima why she suddenly stopped taking the medication. It could have had some sort of negative effect on her. Maybe it doesn't make her feel like herself. And then letting her know that you want her to be safe and that the best way that she can go about quitting the medication is talking with her doctor, but threatening to restrict any extracurricular activities would be considered a violation.
And even with this, we always advise the youth to talk to their doctor and to go before the judge to get a court order, because we know if you're on like psychotropic medications, it has to be decreased. You can't just quit. So we would never just encourage the youth to just stop taking their medication. But if it was for instances where it wasn't making them feel right, we would encourage them to talk to their doctor and talk to the probation officer or social worker and the judge.
Mm-hmm.
So as a caveat to that, right, we talked about court orders. So if the court has ordered that they take all their psych meds without missing them, technically, although how we go about it as the probation officer enforcing that might change, but that would override the foster bill of rights initially, right?
Well, it's their safety, because we don't want them just to quit to take it. So that it would have to be that they would have to go because the judge would have to order that they didn't have to take it, or they would have to order that the dosage be lowered. So that is correct. Yes.
Okay.
See, we're not that bad, are we?
We're gonna have to fast track it through the Prudent parent standards, because I think we're running out of time.
Yes, we will breeze through that. All right, so now we're going to talk about RPPS, which is the other side of the coin to foster youth rights. So this was passed due to the Preventing Sex Trafficking and Strengthening Families Act of 2014, and it mandated that all states provide RPPS policies while parents are making reasonable and prudent parenting decisions while they care for their youth.
Okay. Okay. So real quick, I'll just talk about normalcy. And normalcy is basically a focus on permanency and connection to family and friends. What it does, because I know you guys can read, so I'll let you read the slide, but I'll just talk about, like, during the time that I was in foster care, my foster mom, I was able to join clubs at school. I took stats for the football team. I was on the speech and debate team, forensics. I could go to basketball games and different types of stuff. I had a normal childhood. I had to come home. I had study hour. I had the things that all of my friends did. So even though I was in foster care, I still had that normal experience of when I was in high school, being able to do all the things that my friends were able to do as well. And that's very, very important for youth who are in foster care, to be able to have that independence and to still be able to go to proms and balls and dances and things like that. So that's the normal experience that we encourage for them to be able to have, even though they are in foster care.
As Kendra explained, it matters because it allows us to treat youth in foster care similar to their peers who are not in foster care. So the main goal is to ensure they're able to grow, have a relatively what we consider normal childhood and adolescence where they can explore, develop their interests and talents, safely experiment, make mistakes, learn from the mistakes, develop healthy relationships, and overall have their overall well-being supported while they're in the system. So that's essentially the main goal of foster care while in foster care is promoting more normalcy, which is to make sure youth in foster care are treated similar to their peers who are not in foster care.
I should know the reasonable and prudent.
Oh, okay. All right, so this part was going to be a discussion on some examples of promoting normalcy. So if one person can share an example of promoting normalcy, what would be an example? Yes.
Offering opportunities to participate in after-school sports programs.
Perfect.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. That's exactly one great example, is making sure that they're able to engage in those activities. All right, so here is an overall description and definition of RPPS. It's careful and sensible parenting decisions, and it allows the resource parent to utilize it to make sure that youth are able to participate in these activities and to be able to, again, experience normalcy. That is the main goal of RPPS.
So I'm just going to talk about how the RPPS decisions are made, because we've been having all these wonderful discussions about all these different things. And so the resource parents or the care providers would, again, first look at the age and the ability and the maturity of the youth. That would be something that would be used in determining the RPPS decisions, and the history of the youth and past behaviors. Although we want to consider past behaviors because we also want to consider safety, we don't want to let past behaviors be the continuous reason why the youth is restricted from doing things, because we want them to learn and grow. But we do want to consider those when we're making the decisions on who can go where or what they're able to do, because their safety is of the first concern. The length of time that they've been in the placement, known precautions, again, and other relevant factors to that when making the decisions. And again, input from other service providers as well on, is this a good decision for me to make? So that would be, if this is a resource parent, then they would be reaching out to the probation officer or the social worker and asking this. And even if they had to go to the court, just to verify if this was a good decision for the court. But it is something that we all would do together, and these would be the factors in determining the decision.
Mm-hmm. And all these RPPS decision makings will apply to any day-to-day and routine activities, as well as participation in any age or developmentally appropriate activities, such as field trips, cultural enrichment, sleepovers, and anything like that. So again, it applies to day-to-day routine activities and some of those more specific extracurricular activities. All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit about how you can combine cultural humility and RPPS to uphold the rights. We're going to talk about 4 different youth populations and just briefly give some examples on how that can be done. So the first would be youth who fall under ICWA. So these are youth who are either part of a federally recognized tribe or can be part of a federally recognized tribe. One of the main things we want to focus on here is ensuring that the youth is still connected to their tribe, their tribal community, and is able to practice their culture. So youth who are protected under the Indian Child Welfare Act, it's considering them as in accordance with their political affiliation. So whatever youth is part of a tribe, they should be able to still maintain those connections. Their tribe should still be involved in their case and be helping making decisions, and they should still be able to have that connection to family and community.
So cultural humility for Black youth in foster care. The perfect example was when we gave the example about the hygiene products in bulk. Although we didn't say the race or the ethnicity of the youth, this primarily applies to youth who are in foster care who may be Black or African American. Like I said, with me, it was just a difference from when I was in a children's receiving home and having to use Suave products, so I got to a Black family home and learned about Dark and Lovely. I was like, oh, okay, there's products for my hair, you know, and I don't have to just dry it out anymore. So it's very important. I mean, it may seem small, but it is very important and empowering to be able, like, to have these things and to be able to have cocoa butter lotion, like, and not just the Jergens, because it didn't do anything for me. Like, and so it's just so, it's the small things like this that really mean so much to these youth, and it provides them their humility and their self-esteem to be able to have these things. So.
Next, we'll be talking about LGBTQ plus youth in foster care. So the main categories we have to ensure here is making sure we uphold that youth's gender identity and expression, so using the pronouns that they chose, the name that they chose, and making sure they're able to dress and express themselves in a way that affirms their gender, as well as getting access to resources, services, and even support systems that can help affirm their gender identity as well. And then, of course, we want to make sure that youth have that feeling that they can explore who they are and not be judged for it by their providers or their resource parents. We want to make sure that youth understand that they can still discover who they are, whether it's their gender identity, whether it's their sexual or romantic orientation, and that it's all about providing support for that youth as they explore themselves.
And then cultural humility for youth with disabilities. I think the most important part about this is just to remember, like, the inclusion. Like, inclusion is like a really big thing. And so if we're including people, that means that we're not excluding them. We're not saying, oh, they can't participate because of this. We still want to find a way to be able to include them. Inclusion is like the most important thing that I think that I can just say about youth with disabilities, the same supports and services that we would give to any other youth in the foster care system.
Okay, so now we have a little case study activity, and this is based, again, on a case that our office has had. So kind of thinking about the way that we can apply cultural humility and RPPS to uphold this youth's right. So the case activity is Robert wants to march with his local Black Lives Matter chapter during the city's Pride Parade. The parade is an all-day event, but Robert has an 8 p.m. curfew. The resource parents will not allow him to attend due to safety concerns and staying out past curfew. So what are some ways that you all, as the probation officers or service providers involved in the case, how would you be able to address these resource parents' concerns to allow Robert to participate in these activities? And if you have ideas, you can just raise your hand and share.
Yes? Do we have time to plan for a CFT meeting? Yeah. Yep, that's good. Because Robert better not wait till the day of the parade. And no, that's what he better not do. Anyone else?
Yes, very good.
Very good. Thank you. Good example. Anyone? Yes?
At
Yes, I love that. I was waiting for the resource parents to say they would go. But yes, that's even better. Yes.
Bring him home by 8 o'clock if that's the curfew, but he can still do it for the day.
Yes, yes, thank you.
As a social worker, I used to, I was joking, but I wasn't. So I would say, okay, Robert, so we're going to make sure that this week, we absolutely complete all of our house chores as they should be done, not the halfway way, because they want to go to bed, right? And so if they're gonna allow you to stay till whenever, or, it's this or that. It's a little bit of because, you have to be able to show that you can do your part so that you can do something that you want to do.
Well, you know what? I can't argue with that because they do have the right to attend social enrichment activities, but we also know that as parents, if you don't clean your room, you're not going. So
That's
yes.
something that I would say to my natural kids.
Yes.
I'd say, don't think you're going to someone's party if you didn't do X, Y.
That's RPPS.
Yes.
RPPS, yes.
I would say, like Arlene mentioned, having the CFP person come up with some clear defined rules and expectations about how it will be. So like if there's an adult, they'll go up to a certain particular time. If, for instance, the crowd starts becoming more violent or, things start to happen where they might compromise that safety, then it's an understanding that everyone will pull out and leave.
And don't block the freeway, right? Right. Right. Okay, so yeah, the last slide would basically be to remember the goal. And even though everything we discussed here, the goal is to uphold the Foster Youth Bill of Rights by using cultural humility and RPPS, because it all matters. The Foster Youth Bill of Rights is the basis, but we still need the resource parents, the social workers, the probation officers, the service providers in order to uphold these Bill of Rights. And we do it through making the decisions, the RPPS, the reasonable and prudent parenting decisions. But we just want to make sure that we're upholding the rights of the youth regarding their care placement and services while they're in the foster care system. We thank you.
And if y'all have any questions, you can always contact us.
Thank you all for your participation and engagement in the activities, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.